Hey, all, Jeff Nowak here, WWL Radio and Odyssey Digital Sports producer, and we are coming at you tonight with a live chat to go over the Saints 2022 schedule, which has come out today, officially out as of 7 o'clock, and it's been out since about 10 a.m. this morning. I have Mike Haas with me here, the voice of the Saints. We're going to pop him on here. We're going to go over, some of our favorite games, some of things we're expecting. And how's it going tonight, Mike?
It's been good, man. It's been kind of a wild day because we expected what the NFL's been doing, which was clearly they're planning along just drip, 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 drip. International game, the first Thursday game, everybody's first game, but then by 10 o'clock, I'm like, wait, that looks like the whole schedule. So it's and there were a few tweaks here and there, but for the most part, we've all had some time to digest it.
Yeah, usually they come out, by, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., you'll have a good picture of what the schedule is. I'm pretty sure by 10 a.m. today, everyone knew every game, the start times, the TV networks. It did not take long at all. Not much intrigue to kind of break on the TV special. But we can get right into it. I'll pop up this graphic here so we can go through, the top half of the schedule, which, I do think one of the really interesting things this season is going to be first 3 games of the year, you're right into the NFC South. There is not going to be a chance to kind of, slowly work your way into this season. You're coming out firing with those games.
Yeah, very different than in most recent years. And it's also the same on the back end. I think 3 of their last 5 are all division games. And if you look at last year, they played Carolina week 2, and their next division game was October 31st. No, it was almost, week 8 against Tampa. They had a bye week before they played their second division game. So yeah, this is, it's kind of it's a change in pattern from the NFL anyway. Not sure, I don't know that it has to be all bunched together in the front and all bunched together in the back. Or I wasn't a big fan of last year where you played one and then you don't play again until, almost November. So I feel like there's a happy medium in there somewhere because you're playing these games and you're just with 3 preseason games, you're not at your best in these first 3 weeks, I wouldn't think. And the Saints have been perennially slow starters. But again, that all of the things that we used to say about the Saints with Drew Brees and Sean Payton, well, that's over. We don't know that Dennis Allen and this team's not going to be a fast starter, but typically Saints have not been fast starters.
This is true. The other thing that is kind of interesting about this schedule is you get that extra quote unquote home game, except that's in London.
Right.
So you're not really getting.
The Saints had the extra preseason game last year at home. They would have had 2 of the 3 at home, but
and it didn't happen.
Hurricane Ida didn't happen. Didn't happen at all. Forget road or home. So yeah, it is an interesting preseason. At Houston, at Green Bay, and then the LA Chargers. So that third, you really I would have wanted that second preseason game to be home because you feel like that's going to be the game where you're going to see perhaps the most action. But there's such a break now between the third preseason game and the beginning of the season. I think teams are a little more apt to play, players in that third preseason game because you got a pretty good break before the first regular season game.
For sure. And, last year, one of the storylines was they didn't play a game at the Superdome until week 4. This year, they're only going to get 1 game at the Superdome in the first 4 weeks of the season, so we're still kind of in that, you got to wait a month before you kind of get into the meat of that home schedule. But, the good news from last year going on to this year is they've been a very good road team. The Saints have been a very good road team. They won, I think they went 7-2 and 7-3 in games away from the Superdome, and they went 2-5 in games at home. And as someone who calls the games, how frustrating is that to just you get a homestand and then it's just you're not playing the games, you're not playing the good games at home. All the good games come on the road. You have the Giants at home, you have the Falcons at home, you have the Bills at home.
Yeah, the toughest ones last year were the Buffalo-Dallas game, right? I mean, they'd come off of the losses at Tennessee and the Eagles and Atlanta the week before then. And so you get home, it's back-to-back Thursdays, it's Thanksgiving. and they're a very, very good team. For those two losses at home, where you really kind of felt the crowd would it was just it wasn't the crowd. It was just and it was those two games where you're just like, wow. Uh, and the Buffalo game wasn't really very close. So those you're right. Those two games, the home field advantage, I think is still there from a crowd standpoint. That seems has not played very well. Although if you go back, I mean, that Giant game and that Atlanta game, I mean, gosh, it's just, so critical. That could have been victories, could have changed a lot of things, those two games. Well, that's last year, but it's some things still stick with me.
Yeah, that Giants game, and especially with how the season wrapped up, that's when they say every game counts. That Giants game, you can say that's the reason you didn't make the playoffs. That Dolphins game, you can say that's the reason you didn't make the playoffs. That's where it gets brutal. But I know this is something that you want to talk about, and this is something I want to talk about. A lot of noon starts on this schedule, and there's two games in particular that seem very odd to not be in prime time. One to me is Week 6 versus the Bengals. A lot of people were saying they were looking at that as the London game. I think that there was a lot of reasons you wanted that game to be on TV. But if you're going to put it on TV, why isn't it at least in the afternoon slot, which is weird to me. I think it might be because they didn't want to put a night game before a Thursday night game. Because that, I think the scheduling is a little more of a pain that way.
Yeah,
but
it's tougher.
And then the other one is Week 11 versus the Rams, the first game between the Rams and the Saints in the Superdome since the no call. Another noon start. I don't know why the Saints are noon favorites now, but it's a trend for sure.
Well, to me, that's the biggest travesty is that Rams game. And it's not, I know what the NFL, the NFL doesn't want to make it a big deal. They don't want to have to relive the no call. We do. We do with the Rams, but the NFL doesn't. If they make it out a 3:00 game or a big game, it becomes the focus all day for the broadcast, and the NFL doesn't want it. I don't give a crap. I want it. The Saints fans want it. Noon games and 3:00 games are very different animals. And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that the NFL did it at noon. I just don't like it.
Well, so, to me, I think there's a little more to it than that because the networks bid on these games, right? Like they have a say in this. They pay a lot of money to have a say in it. And I think it's more telling of how the networks view this team and whether people are going to be tuning in to watch a team that's, winning games 9-0. I don't think Sunday Night Football is super keen on bidding on a game that's 2 years in a row has been, just a blowout with the Saints and the Bucks, right? I think that enters the narrative there where, defensive football is not, it's not going to be drawing eyeballs, but I do think that when you're winning games on Sunday Night Football 9-0, it doesn't endear you to the ratings gods, if you will.
I agree, but yet 2 weeks before we get Saints Ravens Monday night. So that argument should still be the same. Well, we don't know about the Saints and, the Ravens, stumbled last year as well. So if that game's indicative and good enough to be a Monday night game, holy cow, you can sell Saints Rams Monday night because the network, the NFL league might not want to talk about that no call, but the networks would love to talk about it for 6 days leading up to that game. And it's been a few years, but that one just sticks in my craw a little bit. But I know what you're saying from a broadcasting standpoint. But if you're going to put the Ravens or the Saints on 2 weeks ahead of time, you can't tell me that we couldn't sell Saints Rams 2 weeks later instead of, not in addition to.
It's true, and you actually get 2 Monday night games, which that's unique. You don't see that very often. You get Monday night in Week 9 against the Ravens, and you get it again in Week 13 against the Bucks. So you still do have a national television game at Raymond James Stadium, and I have a one quick. So this is anytime I hear about the Saints playing the Bucks on national television at Raymond James Stadium, this is what I think of.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Yes. That's it. That's the only thing I can think of every time the Saints go to play the Bucks on national television because it's the playoffs are a different animal. Tom Brady facing the Saints in the regular season has not if you only watch those 4 games, if you didn't watch a single game of Tom Brady's career other than those 4 games in the last 2 regular seasons, you'd be like, who is this guy? Why do I keep paying this guy? He's pedestrian.
Well, no, they play him week 2. Really, that
Yeah.
Monday night game, if who knows, but we'll learn even more week 2. That's the home opener, the Buccaneers. That's if Tom's with Tampa. I'm just not 100% sold yet. I'm kind of sold, but I'm not 100% sold.
What do you mean?
But I don't know. I'm just not 100% sure when season starts he's going to be the Tampa Bay quarterback. I
Really?
just feel like there's possibility he goes somewhere else. I know it's strange. It's May. I don't know.
I think he's making too much money. I think.
I know that.
I think my theory, if we're going with off the wall theories, my theory is that he did the whole fake retirement thing because he wanted to force all these networks to put out all of their Tom Brady's the greatest ever special because he was feeling like down on himself and he wanted an ego boost. And so he got to spend a month watching all of these, like, because I was going through Disney Plus the other day. There's at least 6, Tom Brady, the GOAT specials on there. Those wouldn't be on there if he hadn't retired. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. That's my.
Well, there were 2 things that I just love most recently. One of them I don't really love is that the game ball that was the last touchdown that he threw is now no longer the game ball of the last touchdown. It was at an auction house. And then just play football. I don't care, whatever. Do you have to announce in May that what you're going to do after you stop playing? You're signing with a broadcast team already. And it's just becomes such a distraction. Every bad game he's going to get asked, well, were you thinking about the booth? Does this push you closer to the booth? And so I was watching some broadcast and the guy was reading to the news. He said, Tom Brady's going to sign with Fox right after his playing career. But he goes, man, that guy really doesn't want to be home. I don't care how you look at it. I don't care how pretty you are. And kids, that guy doesn't want to be home. That was hilarious.
Yeah, there was a pretty funny tweet, and it's kind of mean, but it's funny. It's like he spent a month with his family, and he was like, I can't do this. I got to go back.
That's right.
But I will counter that by saying, if we want to be critical of Tom Brady signing his broadcast deal ahead of time, we probably should have been critical of Breeze doing it a few years back because he did the exact same thing with NBC. So, it
wasn't before the season. Was it before the season?
Yes.
When he signed with NBC?
It wasn't. We didn't have the numbers per se. Like it wasn't like a 10-year, $375 million deal. But there was a report that he had it all sorted out. He was going to NBC whenever he retired, and then that's what happened. So
I give Drew gets a pass.
Yeah.
Not Tom.
I mean, for completely unbiased reasons too. I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just as a broadcaster, Drew gets a pass.
All right. Okay. So let's get into predictions a little bit here, and I don't need you to go too in depth in it. I did it for you. There's a post up on WWL Radio where I went through all 17 games and gave you my harebrained ideas for what's going to happen in them. But one of the things that stands out to me here is I think the importance of starting well in this season specifically is going to be important. I can't think of a better word. I think if you don't start at 4-1 with the matchups that you have, 4-1 or better, and then you get to week 6 and beyond with the rest and travel issues you're going to have going to London and then getting to a short week on Thursday Night Football, you're gonna have some struggles there. I mean, when you look at the Cardinals, Raiders, Ravens, Steelers, Rams, 49ers, Bucks from week 6 through 13. Yeah. That is a rough stretch that, it's like you saw last year how quickly a 5-game losing streak or even a 3-game losing streak can just derail, what you have going. And if you don't go into that stretch with a plus 500 record, I think you're going to have a hard time staying in the playoff race.
Yeah, we was talking with Mike Atelier and Christian earlier. And it was the same thing. It was that stretch, but what do we know? Like, are the Raiders going to be? What are the Raiders going to be? Like, I don't know. I'm not sold yet. Ravens, I'm not sure yet. Steelers, is that going to be Kenny Pickett? But beyond that, the Rams, 49ers, and Bucks back to back to back before bye week, at that time of the season, November, December, and, that whole stretch. I mean, Bengals, Cardinals, The Raiders, to me, I don't get a feel for the Ravens. To me, so strong and then just kind of fell apart. Where do they kind of pick things back up? And I don't know if the Steelers. I mean, it's a tough place to play no matter what. But I think you're right. I think this is going to be so. 2 of their first 3 are on the road, but 6 of their first 9 games are home or neutral, right? So that's a lot. 6 of your first 9 either at home or neutral. Well, that means 2 things. You better get off to a good start, and 2, the back end of this thing is going to be loaded the other way, which it is.
Yes,
right?
very light.
The
Right.
back end of your season is going to be away games. Again, this team has perennially and annually done pretty well on the road, and you'll have to. And again, it gets back to division. When we look at December, so it's a bye week after the Tampa game. Then it's Atlanta, Cleveland, Philly, Carolina. Well, what's Atlanta going to be at that juncture? What's Cleveland going to be at that juncture? Will they have Deshaun? What's Philly going to be? It's the records then kind of play so much more into it than if you were playing Philly October 5th than you are on January 1st. Now, weather, the Saints have not really had to deal with weather in the last few years. They just haven't, even their games that they could have, the Jets last year in December, that was beautiful. That was one of the nicest days ever. But at Cleveland in December, at Philly in January, who knows about New Year's Day? They have a Christmas Eve and a New Year's Day game, which puts the Sugar Bowl, by the way, on New Year's Eve, I think like 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's to me, when you look at the back end of a schedule, it's very difficult just because you don't know records, right? Early on, what teams we think are going to be good, and doesn't really matter. We feel like that middle stretch, Ravens, Steelers, Rams, 49ers, Bucks, at Steelers, at Niners, at Bucks, Rams at home. Whew, that's a tough stretch. That's a tough 4-game stretch no matter what. And initially, I was like, wow, the bye week, week 14, that's really late. And then I looked at the games preceding it, and I was like, well, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Well, right. If you can set yourself up in a position to go 3-1 in your final 4 games and make the playoffs, that bye week, week 14 is perfect. But you have to get there in position. My projection, I put them at 11-6. I might be overly optimistic, but it was my projection for them last year. And I don't see this team doing anything but getting slightly better in the areas that they struggled last year. If you can go 9-8 without your starting quarterback, you could have gone 11-6. So I feel okay with that projection last year.
Without their starter, they played 4 starters.
Right.
4. How many teams in the NFL played 4 starting quarterbacks last year? 0.
I don't think any. But they're facing the Eagles on the road for the 3rd straight year. And while it's like, they've lost 2 of these games in a row, the last 2 times they've faced the Eagles were with backup quarterbacks, and they lost those games. But I do think that one of the things that the Saints have were better at last year than they were the year before, they don't go on the road and lose to teams that they should beat. And that's important because if you're going home and losing to teams you should beat, you have to make up that game somewhere.
No, I agree. They're beating New England last year and Washington both on the road, and then Seattle on the road. Now, that Seattle certainly wasn't a should win, but remember, they didn't have Russell Wilson. They had Geno. So then it became but winning those games on the road last year, just incredibly important. And then, the roof caved in. But you're right. This team has done such a good job on winning road games they should win. Now, winning home games, just in general, has been tricky. It's been really tricky.
Yeah, and I have them losing back-to-back home games weeks 6 and 7. I'm sorry, not home games. I have them losing weeks 6 and 7 and I think these are schedule losses. I don't think that this has anything to do with necessarily the Bengals or the Cardinals. I just think you're coming back from London. I think you can I think you can beat that Seahawks team on short rest or on whatever rest you have. But I think you're going to have a hard time turning around and beating a high-powered Bengals team. And I think you're going to have an even harder time coming back and facing a Cardinals team, which will be getting DeAndre Hopkins back for the first time all season on a short week. But then after that, you get the rest. And that's because that's one of the things from a Thursday night game that is actually a benefit is you get the extra rest on the back end. So you're going into that Raiders matchup on 8 days rest. You're going into the next Monday Night Football matchup on 8 days rest, right? So that's going to benefit you during that stretch. And then you also steal a day, which I think the NFL did the Saints a favor with that Monday Night Football game at Tampa Bay because usually when you play a Monday game, you get the short week after that. But going into the bye, you're basically stealing that day. So that's a benefit for the Saints. But I think managing that health is going to be a big thing, and if they can stay remotely healthy, I think 11-6 is reasonable. I think the playoffs are a reasonable hope because the NFC is sad, as Bobby would put it. It's a sad place to be.
That's because the AFC just is pretty strong right now. I think there's so much more evenness in the NFC, and if you could, this is as we look, I don't know who the quarterbacks are. We've never sat here in the preseason or when the schedule's going to go. So, all right, well, in 1, 2, 3, in 3 of the first 6 games, are we 100% sure who the quarterback's going to be? I'm not, right? Like we always knew it'd be Matt Ryan, and then we know Tampa, but I don't know about Carolina. I don't know about Atlanta and Seattle, and I mean it's just like there's even though you might know who they are, they're new, and so it's just so different this year. But Pittsburgh, who's going to quarterback? By San Francisco, November 27th, who's going to be the quarterback?
Is it going to be Trey? There's at least 5 teams where you could say it could be not the quarterback we think it's going to be week 1.
Right. I would bet a lot of money, and I don't have a lot of money, that we are going to see both Desmond Ridder and Matt Corral somewhere. Probably not week 1 and 3, but maybe most certainly week 15 and 18. Just who knows? I mean, but so it's like that across the board. Deshaun Watson, what if his penalty comes, the legal process takes so long. Same thing with Alvin. The legal process takes so long that it's not going to be any suspensions. I don't think are going to happen prior to the beginning of the season. I think they're going to happen somewhere in the season. If you assume that they both get suspended, where does it happen?
Yeah, no, and I think that's why the quarterback questions in the division specifically are why it's so important. I think for the Saints to go 4-0 in those games against the Panthers and the Falcons, those have to be wins to make to be a playoff team. You have to win those games, especially if you're ending up facing rookie quarterbacks in weeks 15 and 18. Those have to be wins. I am very much rooting for Matt Corral to start one of these games because I want to type Golden Corral on Twitter because it's going to be an all-you-can-eat buffet. I
don't know. You were such a big Desmond Ridder guy through the draft. I figured you'd be kind of wanting to see him.
I like Desmond Ridder. I would have liked him better if he was here. But I mean, I don't like Desmond Ridder in Atlanta, and it has nothing to do with Desmond Ridder. It has to do with Atlanta. That roster is just in shambles. I feel Terry's going to do the best job he can, but I have a hard time seeing that team being competitive this year.
And both those games, those late games, are really they're not necessarily flexed, but they might go to the Saturdays. They might go Saturday with Atlanta, December 17th, or Saturday, January 7th with Carolina. So not that it matters a whole lot.
Well, so that is one question I wanted to ask you. So if you, let's see, and Lonnie brought this up earlier, you can start flexing games in week 6 now. If you had to pick one game that you expected the Saints to have flexed, because I have to imagine at least one of these games gets flexed, which would you say it'll be?
Probably Cincinnati, because I think the Saints have a better opportunity, given who they play, where they play, to beat a decent record. I'm not looking at Cincinnati's schedule, but I would assume that they're expecting the same thing, and if not, it better damn well be the Rams game, just to make me happy. But yeah, I can see that Cincinnati game if both teams get off pretty good starts, 4-2, 5-1, and whoever the national game was that afternoon. I think that would make perfect sense to flex that game. Now, doesn't make it a little tougher. Doesn't matter. You play at noon on Sunday or 3 o'clock on Sunday in a short week where you got to travel to Arizona. mean, it's not perfect, but 3.5 hours is not the end of the world.
Yeah, that Arizona game, I have a feeling it's going to be a game you want to turn off at halftime. I just don't with the way the first half of the schedule lines up. I just don't see the Saints being able to go out there on Thursday night and be competitive, let alone win that game. Like I think there are times when the schedule beats you, and I think when you just look at how this stacks up, the schedule is going to beat you there. But there are a few other games that I think are interesting. We don't have to get into all of them. But when you look at the 49ers game, what are your expectations there? I mean, you have Jimmy Garoppolo, you have Trey Lance. How do you make that decision? That's such a weird thing. You're talking about a quarterback who's made the Super Bowl, he was in the NFC Championship. I don't know, 2 of the last 3 years. He was definitely there last year. How do you bench that guy?
You don't. Believe me, they've been trying to do it. Sometimes you just can't. I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, but if you're winning and he's a good locker room guy, they like the guy. I mean, and I would say that Lance to this juncture hasn't been ready. Now maybe by that point, and who knows about injuries or anything else, but that is at Pittsburgh, Rams at home, at San Francisco, then at Tampa. Man, San Francisco is just a good team, Garoppolo or not. I mean, they're very, very good. And so that's going to be a tough game. Saints have not played, they haven't really played there a lot that I can remember, but they haven't played very well when they have been. Man, that's a tough one. So Sunday, November 27th in San Francisco. That's a good one. But who could, is Kenny Pickett going to be quarterbacking on November 13th? With Pittsburgh, probably, right? Is Kyler Murray on the 20th going to have which Kyler Murray is going to show up?
It's true.
It's so, it's just not. We've never had an offseason like this where quarterbacks were so rampantly moved around. And even though you might have a guy who's not a rookie at quarterback, but he's never been there before, and Marcus Mariota, I mean. Was anybody clamoring to get Marcus Mariota, prior to this trade situation? But who knows? Who knows what camp, who's going to be there?
I agree with you. And so one more question, then I'll let you go. It's getting late. How excited are you to go to London to call an NFL game?
I'm excited. I've never been. I've never been to London. I've been to Europe and I've been to Germany. I covered a game in Japan, so I've kind of gone. I just don't know what to expect. All I care about is the booth. I don't care if the game is at Tad Gormley. I care about the booth, and so that's all I will worry about, and I can certainly find out. So I'm looking forward to it. My wife's not thrilled about it. Initially, what we'd heard, the scuttlebutt was that the Saints would play Minnesota Christmas Day as part of the NFL's triple header, which, quite frankly, to me makes perfect sense because you've got this London game, but showcase it where it's not 8:30 in the morning. Showcase it to where you can really showcase it, not for London fans, for U.S. fans. 8:30. And so that's what. So she's like, "Wait, you're going to be in London for a week, and you're missing Christmas?" So October 2nd feels a little better. And I'm curious if it'll be a similar, like if this was Sean Payton, we know what would happen, right? When they leave on Saturday, September 24th, they ain't coming home. They're going straight to London. That's what Sean did in 2017. And that's what this team has always done. If it's a West Coast game, they'll go and practice there. They'll go early, stay a long time. They went to Seattle. The Seattle trip this past year was 4 days. It was the longest trip I'd ever had away from home in football. We went on Saturday and came back on Tuesday. And that was on the team charter. So I feel like that game, because it's exactly like it was in 2017. They played at Carolina. They're packing for Carolina, and they're going to live together and stay together and go to London, and that'll be kind of the bonding situation that we've often seen with Sean.
Gotcha. And remember, it's a soccer stadium. So the eye lines might be a little weird. Just you're gonna have to live with it.
I
All
mean,
right.
I did Washington, the Washington football team last year, and if you've called a game in Washington, there is no place. And I say that, and I've been to them all, most of them. I mean, at Washington, when you look straight down from the press box, from where I was, if you look straight down, you saw fans. What was your direct eye line? Fans. The field was this way. You didn't look down and see football field. You looked straight down and saw fans in the end zone. I went, so when I got to midfield, I was like, it's either a gain of 2 or 7. Not 100% sure. So I am looking
It's a
forward to it. It's
geometry
going to be
test at that point. Yeah.
right. It's going to be it's a tough schedule, man. It's the 8th toughest schedule out there. These are good teams every week. These are good football teams. We're expected to be good. Let's put it that way. They are expected to be good based on performance, based on the draft, based on who their quarterbacks are. So we'll see. I'm like you. I don't 11-6 seems a bit fortuitous. But last year I was 10-7. I thought it was a 10-7 team, and there's no reason to think this is not a 10-7 team or an 11-6. They only got better.
Right. That's what I keep going back to is I didn't see them getting worse. I don't think they got worse. And if they didn't get worse, logic would dictate that
give me a season
your luck's
without
going to get a
4
little
starting
better.
quarterbacks and 4, if I'm not right, 4 kickers.
Yeah.
4 starting quarterbacks and 4 kickers.
And not having to, get kicked out of your homes for the first month of the season would probably help,
Right.
So yeah, I think there's reason to be optimistic. And I don't think that Dennis Allen is gonna we're gonna stop talking about Dennis Allen by week 3 because we're gonna be like, oh, this is all the same. And then nothing's changing.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think it's just gonna be same old, same old.
But all right, Mike, I appreciate you doing this. Again, I'm talking to Mike Haas, voice of the Saints. My name is Jeff Nowak, WWL digital sports producer. I'll let you go, Mike. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, Jeff. Who dat?
All right, y'all. I just want to make sure y'all are aware. So this fancy dancy little graphic we got here, this is actually cell phone sized. So if you wanted to grab it, head over to WWL Facebook or Twitter. You can download it, plop it onto your cell phone, and it's a good way to pretend you already knew when the next Saints game was, even though you didn't, like I never do. But all right, y'all, I appreciate everyone watching, everyone who commented, who threw in a record prediction. The most confident I saw was I think 14-3, which feels really optimistic. But that's where I'll leave you. All right, peace, y'all.